No live, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Southern Planning Committee. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event that the alarm sounds, please leave the building and wait at the front of the building. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed. Could I ask you please to ensure all mobile phones are switched off in order that those watching the live stream know who is speaking? Could members and officers please introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure that members of the committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting. Unless behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I will now ask members of the committee to introduce themselves. Please.
Councillor Ed Potter, Shropshire Councillor for the Lowton Division.
Councillor Tony Parsons, Councillor for Basin Hill, Colham and Sutton.
Councillor Caroline Bagnall, Councillor for Broseley.
Councillor Allcroft, Councillor for Market Drake, Eastern and Rural.
Councillor Nigel Lumbey for Albright.
Councillor Hilary Love for Church Stretton and Craven Arms.
Councillor Robert Tyndall, Brown Clee Division.
Councillor Christian Lee, Councillor for Bridge North East and Astley Albans.
Councillor David Vasner, substituting for Councillor Andy Bollington today. Thank you.
Jenny Powell, Planning Officer, Shropshire Council.
Charlotte Morrison, Area Planning Manager.
David Evans, Councillor for Church Stretton Craven Arms, and also chair of this committee.
Kim Brown, Solicitor.
Kim Ward, Committee Officer.
Thank you. And apologies for absence. We've got Andy Bollington, who's been substituted by David Basworth, and Nick Ignett, the Vice Chairman, is being substituted by Roy Allcroft. Minutes of the last meeting, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on January the 16th. Could I have a proposer for a true record? Thank you, Tony. Seconder, thank you. All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Other questions?
No public questions received, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, please. Any disclosure? No, thank you. Right, item number 5 is the formal bowling green at Ford, Shrewsbury, Charlotte.
Okay, so there's 2 applications on committee this afternoon. They are both on adjacent sites. This site plan shows the whole of the site. Excuse me. The forward bit, so the bit nearest the A458, the proposal is for the religious meeting hall. It is on the proposal as under class F2B. It is an actual fact in the use classes order in class F1. So it's just what it's called in the use classes order. It's defined as a religious meeting hall, so a place of worship. So you can see the site. There is on the wider site an outline consent granted at planning committee for 2 dwellings. That permission is still extant and implementable. Next, I think the next line and then the one after fairly quickly, please. So that's the layout for the meeting hall. You can see where it's going in the front of the site and the landscaping. And then next one, Tim, please. It's a small, fairly unassuming building on that site. There's currently a bowling green. There is some amendments to the access because the meeting hall is just further to the south of the site, and I think the rest is addressed in the report. That's a good photo. You can see on the plan where the public house is. It's just beyond that. And there's another photo on a slightly different angle. Chair.
Okay. Right, we have some speakers on this one. We've got David Kilby. Again, switch on the microphone. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, sir. Thank you.
Just saying David Kilby, Shropshire Playing Fields Association.
Okay, thank you.
And is it this one here, is it?
Yeah, that's it.
The officer report and agent statement for this case
fails to mention, discuss, or even reference planning application 1200621345, an application that refused the proposed building of a motel on this Bowling Green site. Why have you not been directed to it? It gives 4 clear reasons why you should refuse this application today. 1, the proposal will result in the loss of a bowling green. 2, the proposal does not demonstrate proportionate need or community benefit. 3, the proposal is contrary to CS5 and CS6. It does not respect the character of the countryside. And 4, the development will not contribute to the health and well-being of the local community. The officer's report fails to acknowledge or seek to recognise the injustice felt by the 1,000 residents of Ford Village and its nearby surrounds for the loss of their much-loved 90-year-old high-quality bowling green that has attracted over the years 15,000 members and visitors during that time. The officer's report has failed to consult Sport England, whose planning policy clearly defines that this bowling green is not surplus to requirement, and it is still classed as an outdoor open space and sports pitch, despite not being used for that purpose recently. The officer's report has failed to discuss or apply MPPF, which would at the very least demand compensation of in the region of £150,000 being awarded to the parish of Ford residents to help pay for a replacement amenity. The officer's report, when discussing CS5, does not mention that 1,000 Ford Village residents will be excluded and denied access to this much loved and valued community space ever again in their lives. Instead, the officer's report and agent statement put forward the view that policy C5 is met because the hall will benefit just 1 family from Ford Village and just 6 families from its surrounds, even though the village hall just a few hundred yards away would actually perform the same function. Sharing is caring. Community cohesion is vital for long-term sustainability. Open spaces are vital for the future health and well-being of all members of any community. This application will, in SPFA's opinion, divide and cause long-term negativity and resentment amongst members of this rural village.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions from the Foregate building?
Yes, could I,
Councillor Tyndall.
when was the bowling green last used for bowling?
Well,
Roughly, I mean.
the application for the motel was 2012, and 2015 it went out of service because another application went in. But over 5 years is the key bit that makes it statutory within the 5 years for Sport England to be notified. But they then become a non-statutory consultee after 5 years, and that's clearly in the planning policy guidelines for Sport England.
So are we in or out of time?
Well, you're in time because it's still a bowling green.
Oh, I see.
and hasn't been used for anything else. So it's still an open space and it's still a green bowling.
And Sport England still have to be consulted.
Well, they should be. They say they should be. We agree. And to be honest, we would like to have been consulted. If this was Telford and Wrekin Council, they would have consulted us. Because it's Shropshire Council, we had to read in the newspaper about it. I went and looked at the site notice and it was turned upside down and inside out. It didn't actually, you couldn't visibly see it on the photo. So consultation would be, we'd appreciate that going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Rebecca Turner, please, the clerk of the parish council. And you have 3 minutes for this committee, okay?
Good afternoon.
All right, on the right hand side of the button. That's it, 3 minutes.
Ford Parish Council objects to this application in open countryside and the loss of the open space. The core strategy policy CS5 is relevant as it relates to development in the countryside and support proposals which relate to required community uses and infrastructure only where they cannot be accommodated within higher tier settlements. Policy CS8 is also relevant as it relates to services, facilities and infrastructure provision. It states that need or identified needs arising from new developments should be in locations that are appropriate and accessible. A needs assessment and a sequential assessment are needed to justify sites being located outside of hub and cluster settlements and above in the settlement hierarchy. This application fails to provide a needs assessment. Ford Parish Council is concerned that the proposal is inappropriate in open countryside. The local plan review is pressing for Ford to be a community hub, but the Parish Council and the community disagree with this proposed designation. In particular, the Parish Council is challenging Ford's point score for sustainability as per the settlement hierarchy assessment, as Ford does not meet the threshold for it to be considered to be a hub. Furthermore, the local plan review is the subject of significant legal challenge, and therefore no weight should be given to it. And Ford's Samdev open countryside is at present the relevant policy. This site is outside the village envelope, and even if the local plan review development boundary, which is proposed for Ford, were approved, this site would lie outside it and is some distance from facilities. The location does not have a regular accessible bus service, particularly on Sundays, so access is only by car, which is unsustainable and contrary to CS8. Whilst it is stated a sequential site assessment has been done, there's been no needs assessment as required by CS8 to demonstrate the need for this development, and there is no evidence that alternatives such as hiring village halls have been considered. Given that there are other religious meeting halls in the Shrewsbury area for this denomination, we would question the need for this facility in the absence of evidence. Parish Council is also very concerned about road safety on this junction of the A458. The pub opposite is soon to be reopened, adding further traffic as will the proposed dwelling. There is no guarantee people would car share. Police have agreed that there is cause to investigate the parish's safety concerns about the A458, and they are in the process of carrying out some assessment and monitoring work on the road. We would question why national highways have not been consulted, particularly given the cumulative impact of this site and the adjacent dwelling. We also feel that the police should have been consulted, given that they're currently carrying out safety investigations there. Any grant of planning prior to consulting the police, national highways, and awaiting results of the police assessment is potentially sound and premature. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, please?
Yes, please. I know you had to speak quickly because of the time difference, but did you say something about the pub across the road?
There's the Crossgate Inn on the corner, which has been closed for a few months, but it's about to reopen.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Now with the local member, Councillor Roger Evans, please. 5 minutes, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I say I support both the statements that were made, and for members' benefit, the bowling green was in use, well used. However, the owner of that site was the smoke stop opposite it, and that owner banned the bowling club from using that site. So hence they were stopped because they didn't own the land. The land was put up for sale, and there was a 6 months, years moratorium on it whilst they could actually try and raise the money. But the owner of that site wanted so much money that the parish council and the local residents were not able to raise a sufficient cash sum in order to buy it. So it has been closed ever since. And as has been said by the planning officers, even though it was in open countryside, it was given planning permission for 2 houses in 2 years ago, I think, and that is still there. So I'm addressing my point with the assumption that that planning permission is now in place, although the residents would want that bowling club to be able to use that ground again. Unfortunately, it's now been sold to somebody else, and it's got planning permission for 2 houses, so the price of that ground is now very, very high, and the volunteers who used it can no longer afford to buy it. So I'm addressing the actual planning here. I note the application, and also can I say ask to ensure that the conditions look at the times of working and the construction traffic and where their parking is. As has been said, that road is busy. The Washpool Road is even busier. It isn't under Shropshire Council's control. It's under the National Highways. And again, as the last speaker said, I'm surprised that they weren't asked for their views on it, because there have been accidents on that road where the Alberbury Road comes onto there, and there have been numerous accidents there. The police at present came out to Ford a fortnight ago, and they have agreed, and they are now monitoring the speed of that area because vehicles are being overtaken, and there is great concern amongst local residents about the safety of their vehicles and others in the area. It is a heritage site, grade 2, as in the report, which is the pub opposite, which has just been sold. And please ensure again that the conditions as per the heritage report, which is in front of you today, that all those in her report are complied with. So we are where we are with this site. And although I would like to see everything returned back to a bowling green and everything there, reality is it's now got planning permission, which, as the planning officer says, is now valid until mid-April of 2025, I think. So we are where we are. So what I'm trying to do is, if the meeting hall does is there, please ensure that it remains as a small meeting hall for a small number of families, as it says in the planning documents. 12 families, 36 people locally who live there, 17 spaces for parking. I and the whole area would not want to see it expanded and used for more commercial purposes or anything like that. As it's been referred to, there was a motel. There was another application, which is in your notes, to say there was going to be all storage containers put on the site, all that there. It is a visible site. It is visible as you're coming to England, if you want to, from Wales, although the road into Wales goes down there. So please, let's make it look nice and be safe to actually walk on, cycle on, and ride in a car on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure, Roger, whether you can help me on this. Following the sort of valuation of this site, the previous owner, but one maybe, didn't want the building to carry on because he wanted to, it was not your words, but release the development value. Is that?
We're not naming the person or anybody who owned it, but the pub was forced to close because of lack of income and the availability of it. So the owner of the pub retained ownership of the bowling green,
right?
But the pub was then became closed. So the previous owner, who owned both sites, if you wish, retained ownership of the bowling green, that green area, and obviously trying for planning permission because they considered it was a valuable site for building on, but the pub was separate and it was failing to generate enough income to keep it going. I understand it has now been bought and it is referred to elsewhere.
So the Holly Road Trust, who's the applicant? Who are they? Are they the church?
I've no idea. They have put the application in for both these sites, I see, and I don't know whether the owner of the site, which is them, has now got two buyers, because there's the other application you're going to consider very shortly, and they are obviously trying to sell this site to get the best price possible.
I'm slightly surprised that the church can afford to buy a piece of land and build on it. Sorry? Michelle shaking her head.
No, okay. Thank you, Roger, very much. Nicola and Nigel, for one, please. Who's the agent? It's the right-hand button, sir, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Nigel Thorns representing the applicants today. Your officer report provides a very detailed appraisal of the scheme and covers the issues comprehensively, so my speech will simply highlight a few key points. An important part of the scheme is that the site has an existing planning permission for a dwelling granted in 2021, which expires on the 27th of April next year. So I apologise for being blunt, but this site will be built on, whether it's the bungalow that was approved at committee in 2001 or whether it's the meeting hall that's approved, hopefully today. The hall itself would be for the sole use of the Plymouth Brethren Christian community. Their main church is in Bicton, but these smaller community buildings provide for local worship, prayer and religious meetings in small family groups. The building will be used by 12 of those family groups in the local area. The building very simple in its design and materials. It's single story, modest in size in terms of the overall plot. The building will be used infrequently. The use is quiet and will cause no amenity problems to any neighbouring property. In terms of the comments made by objectors today, whilst the site is technically an open countryside, it was agreed in 2021 during the planning application for that dwelling that the site formed a natural part of the built-up area of Ford, and the same applies today. Importantly, policy CS5 supports facilities to meet existing community needs such as religious buildings, and so the principle of development in this open countryside location is acceptable. The loss of the bowling green was fully assessed by officers and your planning committee and Sport England in the previous planning application for a dwelling in 2021, and it was agreed its loss did not conflict with policy. The Sport England comment is on the IDOC system for the previous application. Interestingly, there's been no objections from any neighbouring houses. The new owner of the pub did comment, but I can confirm that there will be no conflict between the uses. The parish council are concerned about parking and access, but your highways team has confirmed that from a technical perspective, there are no objections to the proposals, and the access and visibility are acceptable, and the parking is also acceptable. In terms of other consultees, all of these, including drainage, ecology and conservation, have no objection, meaning that there are no detailed technical reasons to refuse the application. So in conclusion, policy CS5 supports such facilities in the open countryside to meet community needs. The site already has an extant planning permission for a dwelling which expires next year. We're simply proposing an alternative church meeting hall in its place. All of the technical consultees have no objection, and on this basis, we hope you can support the scheme this afternoon.
Any questions, please, Mr. Thorne? No. Thank you very much, sir. Can I come back to Ireland?
It's a lot. Just to address a couple of those points. I think we need to be careful to stick with planning issues of ownership. We are veering then outside what we should be discussing at committee. There were a couple of conditions mentioned, I think, Councillor, and if members have a look at the conditions at the bottom, there is a construction management plan condition on both. Unusually, and this was the subject of some discussion with colleagues in legal, we wouldn't generally look to put on a restrictive condition like at condition 3, which is for the sole use. It's basically a personal condition for this group. That was felt reasonable and necessary because they are a particular group that behave in a particular way, so they wouldn't share their facilities. And I think it's correct that if it were to be a more general meeting place for practicing faith, a place of worship, I think different groups would have different kind of uses. So they might hire it out to yoga and dance, and this group doesn't do that. So it's just for them to practice their faith. We have restricted that, but that's quite an unusually restrictive condition that we've had to think about quite carefully. In terms of the consultees, I've not managed to log in fast enough to have a look what Sport England said last time, but I can do that if members want me to.
I've got that from the previous.
And yeah, the police, in terms of the traffic, we wouldn't consult the police on that. That's a highways matter. I know other police forces do have architectural liaison officers, but Shropshire doesn't have one. That's a map for the police, it's not a map for the council. I think that's all I've got.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. You want to open the debate, please? Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Councillor Evans summed up the situation well here, in that I'm also concerned about the loss of playing facilities at the local community, but this one has probably already gone, in that there is the planning permission already agreed for the development of the 2 houses on this side. And so then it comes, in my view, to a balance as well.
would this current application add more problems or more issues than what's already been approved for 2 properties? And I also noted, that some of the complaints about the application have been both with regard to the amount of traffic and also whether this is going to allow enough community use, which is a difficult balance, because if there's more community use, there's likely to be more traffic. And so, I don't see anything in this application to object to. I think I will be voting to approve this application. We have none of our consultees who are objecting to this, including highways, and so I'm minded to support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Lumby, please.
Yes, I'm one of the councillors that sat on the committee last time, and we fully debated the issue regarding the loss of it as a bowling green. And the reality is we come to the conclusion that planning permission could go ahead. And I think really, as a committee, we ought to sort of stick with that, because there's nothing we've heard today that suggests it should be done any other way. Regarding the traffic use by the parking, the bowling green itself, I presume, had a car park and would have attracted cars to it, and was probably used more often than the use by the church on their restriction that they've got. So I can't see any reason why we should object to this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Potter, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of what I'm going to say has been said. I'm acutely aware of the traffic concerns with the 458 and safety on that. I don't think there was a car park associated with the bowling green, but I presume people parked at the pub and used it. But again, there will have still been traffic movement associated with bowling because of visiting teams and the such like. So I think the work that's ongoing with the parish council looking at the 458, I'm not sure there's anything within planning terms that we could condition that I can see at this stage that would help that. And the fact that the principle of development has already been established, had I been on the committee looking at the bowling green last time, I might have had a different opinion, but that I wasn't, and we are where we are, so I'm minded to support the application. Thank you.
Councillor Badlam, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd be interested to see what Sport England had to say about this in the previous legal application, if that's okay, because I do worry about the loss of the bowling green. And the other thing is, I think the good debate here is really about conditions, as far as I can see. And I think Councillor Evans mentioned about the conditions so that the place cannot be expanded, and also about deliveries as well. So I just want to obviously that included in the traffic management plan, I assume, but I'd like more kind of details perhaps about that.
So the previous Sport England, this is on the 2021 application. Low numbers are complicated, aren't they? So they've said the proposed development does not fall within either our statutory remit or non-statutory remit, and that was back in 2021. So we've made that assessment. They did make some comments on it. A reference to the MPPF. Trying to paraphrase it as quickly as I can. They're talking about if it's a provision of a new sport. The rest of the information is just really generic. So if it involves a new sports facility, if it involves loss of the sports facility, if it involves the provision of additional housing, they're talking about that would generate additional demand for sports. I think the rest of it is probably generic and then provides links, but they're saying that it doesn't fall within their statutory or non-statutory functions at that stage. In terms of traffic management, we've got to be it's a really careful balance of conditions in terms of traffic management, how much we can put on to a very, very small development as to what is technically, it's quite a small development. We can't overburden it with conditions that are not reasonable and relevant to what we're permitting. So I think the fact, controlling deliveries, and there is a construction management plan on there to balance. If both are constructed together, we've got no control over that. They can implement consents when they want to. That gives them the opportunity to deal with as much or a varied degree of things. So, they can come back with a plan to say, we're going to not have bricks arriving at 6 a.m. So I think that condition probably covers members would want it to, hopefully. If it's deliveries and general traffic, I don't think the site's big enough for traffic management. I don't think they'll have that amount really. And given the kind of quantum of development, there is probably enough room on site to hope for that.
Just on the condition to restrict further development. Obviously, it's a small unit for a small community, a small religious community. Obviously, could we condition the fact that it shouldn't be expanded in the future?
That's not a necessary condition. There's no permitted development rights for places of worship or ecclesiastical exemption anymore, and it's a meeting place. What we've done is conditioned it to be owned by them. So if they want to, they can come back and get rid of that condition. If somebody else bought the site, for instance, and wanted to come back and get rid of that condition specifically, they can do. But it's not necessary to put a no expansion condition on because they need planning consent for that anyway.
Okay. Anyone else to speak, please? Okay. Anybody make a proposal, please? Councillor Parsons?
I'll propose that the application is accepted in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Can I have a second for that, please? Councillor Quafford? Okay. Right, will you take the vote, please?
If you can indicate whether you're voting for or against the proposal in line with the officer's recommendation. Roy Oldcroft.
For.
Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Kelly Wheeler. For. Nigel Lumby.
For.
Tony Parsons.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Robert Tyndall.
For.
David Basma.
For.
David Evans.
For.
He wasn't here for the start.
Richard Upper.
Were you here?
I abstain because I missed the officer's initial report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've got Richard Evans abstaining.
Okay, so that is approved. Thank you. Right, we go on to item number 6, which is former Bowling Green forward outline permission. Right, John, please.
The other half of the same site, it's an outline application for a single dwelling. All matters other than the point of access are reserved for later approval. So I think the next plan, Tim, is a indicative layout plan. Can you get the next one, Tim? Your computer's moving on the screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
There we go. It's caught up with you.
The small plan, it's that's indicative because layout, design are reserved for future determination. It is just that and the point of access.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right, we have speakers again. We got Mr. David Kilby. 3 minutes, I'm thinking.
Say apologies now if there's any repetition. The officer's report and agent's statement for this case fails to mention, discuss, or even reference planning application 1200621345. I think that's quite important. That refused the proposed building of a motel on this bowling green. As discussed previously, it gave 4 clear valid reasons why you should refuse this application, as well as the last today. The officer's report today, 6.4.2, page 28, says in terms of any other sporting or recreational use as previously considered, this is the important bit, it is not clear that it meets the definition of an existing open space or sports facility. As such, the development is not required to meet the tests as set out in the MPPF. But if it's not clear, how can you draw that conclusion? Why didn't the officer ask us? We know what we're talking about on this particular subject, not every subject, I can assure you. Or Sport England, better still, to clarify the situation and make it clear. Why just ignore and dismiss the consideration? Even though the use as a bowling green was over 5 years ago, Sport England state as part of their playing fields policy, page 7, paragraph 15, that they would still expect to be consulted, albeit as a non-statutory consultee. Their policy is very clear when it states a lack of use of a playing field should not be taken as necessarily indicating an absence of need for the area. Don't discuss that yet. To SPFA, it is clear that the officer's report should be applying MPPF guidelines and that this requires a simple 3-question test. Is the bowling green surplus to the requirements of the village? No, Roger Evans has said that. They were forced off that site. Should the loss be replaced by equivalent or better provision in a more suitable location in the village? That's still to be discussed. And would the proposed development clearly outweigh the loss of the former use? That's for you to decide. You haven't discussed that. SPFA believe this MPPF test should be applied here today, and that if applied, the application would be refused or deferred. So a sum of 150,000 can be agreed with the applicant to mitigate the residents of Ford for the loss of this 90-year-old bowling green, payable to Ford Parish Council to spend on an alternate sporting or social amenity within the village. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you very much, sir. Nicole and Rebecca Turner, please. Thank you.
Ford Parish Council objects to this application for one dwelling in open countryside. The application follows on from the previous outline application for 2 dwellings, which Ford Parish Council also voiced concerns about. Parish Council is concerned that the proposal is inappropriate in open countryside. The local plan review is pressing for Ford to be a community hub, but the Parish Council disagrees with this, in particular in terms of the points assigned to Ford in the settlement hierarchy. Furthermore, the local plan review is the subject of significant legal challenge, so the prevailing policy at the moment is Ford Samdev open countryside status. The legal challenge to the local plan review has become more significant than at the time the previous planning application was granted. So this further emphasises that Samdev should be the only policy being used in determining Ford settlement status. The site will lead to a loss of open space and there's some distance from village facilities. We're very concerned about road safety on the hazardous junction of the A458. It's normal practice where a site is likely to have an impact on the strategic road network, i.e. the adjoining A458, the national highways should be consulted, and we question again why national highways haven't been consulted, given that it's directly adjacent to the A458 and there's safety concerns on that road that are significant enough to the extent that the police have seen fit to investigate further. So again, we reiterate that any grant of planning prior to consulting with national highways and awaiting the results of the police safety assessment is premature and potentially unsound.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Calling the local member, what's your name, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Much of what I said previously is also applicable to this one, although this site has got planning permission at this moment in time. I note again, though, that it's outline planning, and fundamentally I'm against outline planning, but I know it's allowed, and I would ask the committee and officers in the future to really regard this area, the heritage statement about the properties around it and what was said about the hall to ensure that any full application, when it comes through, actually helps it. As I understand it, really, this is just have the new access onto that side road. And one of the items I didn't address the last time, and I should have done, is that the other access to Ford is obviously from the crossroads a little bit further down. There are problems accessing Ford through that road. And that's one of the reasons there was a meeting with the police recently about it, because of the school, and the parking outside the school blocks the access to that road and makes people coming out and onto that road during the school times almost dangerous as such. And therefore this access into the village is therefore used. I would also make reference again about times of work in the construction and the parking, because of how busy that road is at certain times. Also make reference that there's a section of land that is included in the planning application. There is a dispute over ownership. It was listed in the previous application, which had approval, and I understand the locks and chains which did a various gate was actually cut off when the grass was cut. But that's a civil matter, and I understand it isn't a planning application, but this does need to be taken into consideration, if at all possible, that the land needs to be looked at by the appropriate applicant and some sort of maybe redress on it. And as it is said, open countryside for Ford, it is under a hub in the new draft local plan. Ford appeared before the planning inspectors and objected to it, and we will wait to see what the planning inspectors make of this. And also, as I said before, about the heritage site, grade 2 listed of the pub opposite, which was called the Smokestop. That's me finished, Chairman, but I do note, for example, the number of bedrooms on the application is left blank. So please, when it does come back, and any conversations officers have with the applicants about the property there, take into consideration the area it is and everything to do with it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Roger. I call Mr. Nigel Thorne, please.
Thank you, Chair.
2 minutes,
Thank you. I'll be the same. I'll be repeating things. I do apologise. Again, the officer report, very detailed, goes through all the issues. The previous planning permission granted in 2021 expires next year. Again, I'm going to be blunt and say if this dwelling isn't approved, the one granted in 2021 will be approved. So a dwelling will be built on the site either way. The only need for this application, as mentioned by the officer, comes from the fact that there's a slight change in the access position. It was moved about 7 metres to the north. That's the only difference. That's the only change. All of the matters are exactly the same. In terms of the comments by objectors, again, it's all the planning policies remain the same to the previous approval. The loss of the bowling green was assessed previously. Whilst in open countryside, it's part of the village. The 3 objectors speaking today, there haven't actually been any comments from neighbours. Councillor Evans referred to an issue of ownership, and we've actually excluded a portion of the site to avoid that issue. So that piece of land in dispute is separate. It's not actually included in the planning application. All of the Consult 3 responses are all positive. Your highways, in particular, that's the only change in the application. Your highways officers confirmed that the highways issues are acceptable. In your 2021 committee, it was requested that the details of the reserved matters application, including design appearance, were brought back to committee for a detailed assessment, and the applicant is happy to do that. So it has a planning permission, no material change in circumstances. All the technical consultees have no objection, and we hope you can support the application. I've got a little bit of spare time, so a question was asked earlier. The Holyhead Road Trust, who are there? They are the managers of the churches in which this community group, Christian group, meet, and so they operate and manage those church buildings. The issues, a couple of issues in terms of historic ownership. The applicants bought the site in good faith. with the hope of providing a church facility for the local community and provide the other part of the site for a dwelling. It was all done in good faith. I'm not sure what's happened in the past about who was getting and what money, no idea. But it was all done in good faith. Okay, thank you, Jim.
Very much. Councillor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want you to clarify this piece, if that's okay, Charlotte. So the previous planning application that we've got means that there's no, if that house is built, there's no bowling green. So really, bowling green's gone anyway. That's, can you just, because obviously that's what the local parish council are saying, that they'd like to see the bowling green. I just want that clear, that if you could just clarify that for me, please.
So, having a look at what Sport England said on the previous application, they were clear that because of the length of time since it's been used as a bowling green, it sat outside of both their statutory and non-statutory consultee status. Yeah. So they wouldn't. The bowling green is gone, and I think Sport England have kind of clarified that by saying it's not something they can be consulted on. And it's private land. It's not public land. We can't decide, that owners have to use it for that purpose. And because it's been out of use for that long, I don't think it's abandonment in the planning sense, but it has been, the use of the bowling green has been abandoned, so it wouldn't count against that for those reasons.
But also there's already outline planning permission on that site, so the bowling green is gone because of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the agent's correct. If they want to use the planning permission they've already got, they can do so. So that I think what he said was the house will be built here, whatever decision is made on this application, which is the fallback position.
Thank you.
Councillor Potter, please.
Thank you, Chair. So from what I can see, reading this application, the only changes to access. So what we should be discussing is, are we happy with the access? There's no complaints or issues raised by Shropshire Council Highways. So the fact that there's already a planning permission in place for something outlined, I hear what Councillor Evans says, and I think, can it stand that any reserved matters would come back to committee? Is that possible for this application as well as, because that was in the previous one, was it not? Yeah, are we happy for that? I would be happy to move approval if that could come back to this committee.
Members one, that's fine. Yeah. It is obviously a matter.
Yeah, well, if anyone's
please.
My question has been answered that yes, the reserve matters come back to committee because I think points made about there's a lack of detail, understandably a lack of detail in the outline planning. So on that basis, if that's the condition, it comes back to committee for agreeing the reserve matters. I will second Ed's proposal to.
Okay. Right, we've got a proposal and a seconder for the application, the condition that all reserved matters comes back to this committee for approval.
Conditions.
Yeah. Okay, right, okay.
Okay.
Right. We'll go to file note, so as it comes.
Got proposed and a second to accept the officer recommendation with the recommendation that reserved matters come back to committee.
Yeah.
If you can indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. It's Roy Aldcroft.
For.
Caroline Bagnall. For. Richard Huffer.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Hilary Left. For. Nigel Lumbey.
For.
Tony Parsons.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Robert Tinsell.
For.
David Basmat.
For.
And David Evans.
Forward.
Yes, that's unanimous.
Okay, that's John, Bill and Kevin, thank you. Item number 7 is the schedule of appeals, for noting unless anybody's got any concerns they want to raise. And note those, okay. All right, date of the next meeting is Tuesday, March 12th, 2 o'clock. All of you know, thank the officers for the great work, thank you all for turning up today, and wish you a safe journey home, thank you.